What's up, guys, and welcome back to GBPJPY. Welcome to the memberships only side of GBPJPY. We will be essentially going over the 3 phases to profitable trading, essentially developing a profitable trading system through repetition, consistency, very much hard work, and dedication, of course. I don't think I said discipline. I do appreciate everyone who very much takes the time to view my videos, no matter if they're a part of members only or not. Understand that if you have not purchased my members only content, there will still be content available for you, on this channel or platform in whichever case. However, for those who are very much participating within our memberships only, it does come with a significant amount of perks, from new and never before seen exclusive trading gems as well as concepts, to extravagant content, really kind of exploring the inner and outer details of the Forex market, or which any kind of market really. Lately, within my Forex trading journey, we here at Roguefx Trading also provide a market maker mastery video series, again only for members only. This is a pretty significant guide to essentially master, over time of course, the simplest trading method to absolute date, essentially 2023. I also very much provide signals services as well as a signals chat, so you can very much understand and really kind of go over, essentially review my trades and really kind of compare them to what you're seeing, what you're essentially going through in your journey, and really kind of not only very much learn from my mistakes, but learn from your own as well, of course. This will in turn very much expedite your trading journey, because the things that you could have went over maybe 10 times by yourself, you'll probably go over maybe like 3 to 4 times with me, and it'll very much lead to essentially exponential growth, not only in your trading accounts, but of course within your trading journeys. This is a journey, my friends. As you continue to make money, yes, it's fine. You can make money off signals, and it's very much, it's congratulatory. But I want to show you guys how to do this so you can very much, establish a firm foundation for yourselves, right? For your families and for your community, of course. And of course for God, man. You're doing this for God. You're not doing this for anyone else, simply because you're not going to get anywhere within this industry without, strong belief within yourself, strong belief within the Most High, and, faith, guys. Faith. It's a thing, guys. It's not. It's definitely a thing, right? I do appreciate every one of you guys for tuning in. Thank you for the likes. Thank you for everyone who hit that subscribe button and very much joins my membership only for, of course, more exclusive content on trading in general. Without further ado, let's very much get started. Looking at our first official setup opportunity, as you can see, it was very much a loss. If you are very much confused, this is going to be our take profit, and our stop loss is essentially going to be just around 10-15 pips. As you can see, my friends, this is the effect of simply trying to see liquidity magnetized toward a mitigation sequence, in whichever case attempt essentially a rebalancing mechanism, right? Only difference is I was looking at this point of interest. Yes, we did get a significant, maybe slight, maybe even near miss. However, in whichever case, it wasn't necessarily liquidated. Essentially, we were simply, in whichever case, against the trend, out of sync with the market, which essentially led to a stop loss hunt within, if I'm being honest, within minutes, right? Most importantly, to really kind of understand that what's actually kind of taking place is an unmitigated wick essentially being used as a significant mitigation sequence, right? So essentially we did have the right idea. However, again, it's very much important to establish your bias, in turn really kind of understand that you're going to have to show up to your trading window at least twice. It makes sense to, right? Because while I could have saw this and very much just taken a short simply because of price action's ability to present a weak low, protected high, at that point, I mean, it's just insinuating just because we have a half trend means the price is going to very much sink down towards lower prices, which of course it very much did. But I mean, essentially that wasn't the correct move in whichever case. Understanding that price had other intentions in whichever regard, Apologies. Let me go ahead and straighten this out. We had very much other intentions, and very much missed out on a significant trade opportunity. Very textbook, of course, obviously with the internal range liquidity being taken out, as well as the plethora of essentially weak highs that are essentially targeted. My friends, it's simply safe to realize that we let instant gratification really kind of hold us back from a significant trade opportunity that would have led to well over a 1 to 5, right? However, that is okay. That's why we review our trades, win or lose, and very much understand that there's something to learn regardless, right? Moving on into our next trade. I'm sorry, I'm laughing because I did the same thing on the second trade, and this is why again we go over our losses, simply because, guys, I want to reiterate this: just because we have a weak low, protected high, half trend presented, does not mean price is automatically going to continue towards the lows, my friends. It just, I know at times you're going to get a significant streak, which is going to allow you to actually do this, right? Because most times than not, price is going to rebalance or maybe even fill in an imbalance and continue towards the lows. In this case, very much rebalancing off of a bullish rejection block, right? However, where we were looking to very much see price continue with an expansion, price decided, nope, we're going to shift, take you out, right? Liquidate your stop, and essentially provide on the other side of the market a failure to break this previous high. A reach for internal range liquidity. Let me let me very much in whichever case delete that risk reward ratio and really help you guys understand where internal range liquidity can very much lie, which is a very much as weak low, right? As well as a pretty significant point of interest in whichever case. A bearish rejection block continuing towards the highs in whichever turn, internal range liquidity, right? However, it's important to understand that, well, we had a liquidity grab towards the left, establishing this as our nearest protected low. I'm sorry, wow, our nearest protected high, right? We are establishing lower highs as we continue to very much take out internal range liquidity. At this point, it's safe to really kind of assume our inducement to be a significant point of interest. This is why it's important to very much target the inducements over really a lot of things, especially when working with a half trend, right? Essentially a weak low, protected high. Moving on to our next trade. My friends, as you can see, we did have a significant entry just before essentially being liquidated, right? Again, this is another trade to where we just failed to pay attention to detail. We failed to understand what was essentially going on. We were working within a significant confirmation. We'll call it confirmation opportunity. What do we have towards the left? We have a weak high, protected low, essentially helping us really understand where our mitigation sequence is and where it can be redefined to essentially an imbalanced close price action, right? Of probably this bullish rejection block right here. Really kind of besides the fact at this point, simply because we do have an inducement, essentially a trend line that can be very much stretched, as well as an unmitigated wick that can be very much used as essentially a liquidity grab, right? So while we were looking for something that could have been very much ignored, very much essentially used as something along the way, in this case, we have a significant expansion or impulse towards the highs. At this point, we could have just very much drew our Fibonacci sequence and very much targeted any kind of highs using a simple buy stop, right? But in this case, we have to very much learn our lesson and really kind of differentiate between delayed gratification and instant gratification. And what does come with that usually is, especially in trading, right? Because again, in trading, it helps to be patient, right? It pays to be patient, essentially, right? Because essentially, price showed its hand. We have a slanted, in whichever case, a 3 candle formation. Price reached for liquidity, maybe even past fair value equilibrium. Fairly simple. Continue towards the highs. In whichever case, very much targeting a weak high. If this high is weak, and if this high is low, well, don't you think we could very much duplicate this on the other side of this? We'll call this a fair value equilibrium. We're going to take this and put it right above. In that case, we have our significant TP2, really kind of helping us really understand the furthest extent we can very much see price continue, essentially by understanding, of course, that we have an expansion, correction, expansion. It's just a little cool way that I use to very much identify price action as far as take profits after your partials in whichever case. Moving on to our next trade opportunity, we very much did it down this one with it's going to be a win, of course. It's going to be a 1-4. If of course, you're just beginning, it's important to understand risk management and really kind of capital exposure, of course. In whichever case, we are provided with a significant weak low, protected high. And I mean, if you really want to mark it up or really understand, we have an imbalanced close, price action inefficiency. Price continues those lows. We fail to break a previous low. Retest, take out internal risk liquidity, of course. Mitigate an unmitigated wick in order to continue towards the lows, right? Essentially, this weak low in whichever case, right? This is going to be the beginner phase of our overall setup, essentially really kind of dealing with the dot method, which is pretty simple, pretty easy to really hone. Moving on to our second phase, obviously the advanced method, we very much have price essentially mitigating this bullish rejection block. We can very much transfer the orders to a bearish order block that's very much being presented, essentially working with the down move for the move up, and that in whichever regard, right? However, it's also important to understand that this bearish rejection block can be very much redefined to an imbalanced close, price action inefficiency, very much continue towards the highs, essentially internal risk liquidity. It is good to very much keep in mind that mitigation sequences are very much the highest form of liquidity, being, of course, this weak low being used as a pretty significant point of interest, as well as this rejection block that is very much bullish, being used as a significant, we'll call it a mitigation sequence, i.e. a point of interest, right? Very much redefining, as well as very much choosing to recognize the rebalancing mechanism towards the left that price is essentially using to eventually target, right? Towards the highs, really just understanding that this is a weak low, and essentially a cluster of weak lows. Towards the highs, we can understand that this is going to be simply a liquidity grab, right? This is going to be simply a liquidity grab. This is going to be simply a liquidity grab, essentially giving us 3 opportunities to, essentially profit within these markets, especially when it comes to this significant range. Moving on to the master level within our trading system, or not level, but definitely phase. As you can see, my friends, we have a weak high, weak low. We can very much use this as a half trend in whichever case. Go ahead and tighten this up a little bit. Looking towards the left of our overall entry, we very much have a protected high, weak low. We can use this as a full trend, right? Again, we're presented with, I mean, honestly, if I'm being honest, a plethora of entries, whether that be the first direct confirmation, or maybe even a late entry off of the mitigation sequence, of course, continuing towards external risk liquidity. Price provides a failure swing, right? Essentially reaches for internal risk liquidity all over again. In turn, really kind of associating with this inducement, right? If you want to give me a second, I can very much clean this chart up for you. In this case, I mean, me personally, I in whichever case, guys, you got to understand, especially when the markets are live, it can very much play on your psyche, really kind of help you. Or, I mean, if I'm being honest, like really kind of just being point blank, simple to the point. Very often in your career, dealing with obviously live markets, you can and will deal with a lot of error in judgment. It's simply your psyche really kind of second guessing itself, especially when you say the correct thing first and then you go back on it. Guys, this is all about trust. You're looking to develop trust within yourself, within your system, within the man above. You feel me? So in that case, it's important to be patient with your process. Be patient with God. Be patient with your family. Be patient with your immediate surroundings, because your time is very much going to come. It's just, it's going to take some hits. It's going to take some L's. It's going to take some, maybe a significant amount of discouragement, a significant amount of growth. It's going to take that, simply because this is trading and it's not going to be given to you. Why would it be given to you? Simply because, anything worth having, it needs to be tough. It needs to very much bring out that inner strength within you that you probably wouldn't have if you didn't take on whichever challenges that you were presented with, of course, right? Moving on to our next trade, yes, again, it was very much a loss, right? In whichever case, I mean, I usually am good with the GJ. It's a pretty favorite pair of mine. Like, it's one of those pairs that you very much do fall in love with and really kind of do grow to appreciate. However, in this case, my friends, we can lose. It happens. And a lot of the times it happens just like that in the matter of a couple of minutes in whichever case. What fixes this essentially this mindset of actually taking a loss is just thinking long term, guys. Think long term. Think 5 years from now. Think 10 years from now. Where would you be? And that's not necessarily to waste anybody's time. This is really to really help you understand that this is not a hobby. This is a whole profession. This is a career. At that point, are you willing to do what it takes? Are you willing to spend that extra time? Are you willing to go the extra mile simply because this is what you want to do? Right? This is a whole career, which means that at a point in your life, this is going to be your life. When you understand that, this is understanding that you need to be intentional with your energy. Simple as that. Moving on to our next trade. Yes, my friends, another loss. Um, Let me see, real quick. Yeah, I'm very much not sure how I lost this trade. Let me see. Um, I don't think it was towards the left a little bit more. But either way, it's very much one of those trades where you assume the I see. So it was one of those things where you saw equal highs. You put your stop above essentially an unmitigated rejection block. And it's one of those times where yes, it's an unmitigated rejection block. Yes, it's a protected high. But when you draw your fib and you choose to put your stop loss essentially right here, right near your fair value, the possibility of spread might, in whichever case, be egregious in whichever time of the day, and you will just have been liquidated for that window unless you very much set an alert, which I very much did not, which is fine. It's perfectly fine. I've learned to really kind of accept and grow through my losses in whichever case, through my setbacks, right? So, I mean, yes, we lost a pretty significant opportunity. We do have an unmitigated wick for a fair value equilibrium tick, coming off of, again, a significant amount of liquidity grabs, right? But I mean, that's trading. That's fine. It's perfectly fine. It's just something that happened, and we are looking to very much increase our stop loss to the original 15 pips instead of 10 pips in whichever case. It's fine though. It's perfectly fine. It is a part of trading. It is another ability to very much take a loss and delete your risk reward and delete everything and really move on to the next trade. However, it takes a gifted soul, a gifted individual to sit and take what life has been handed to them and really kind of make something beautiful of it. If really that really makes sense, right? Moving on to our next trade opportunity, my friends. As you can see, my friends, I very much was not playing when I said that August is going to be a tough month. I came into August thinking it's going to be a tough month simply because, I mean, obviously when you take notes or when you very much carry a journal throughout your journey, you can very much keep track of these things and really kind of understand your trading journey to its fullest extent. Again, it's a journey, right? So imagine you learn the significance or the in and outs of your journey, essentially the cyclical cycles, and really understand that a lot of the things that you essentially go through can be very much, grown through. I hope that makes sense. I'm sorry. However, in this case, yeah, again, one of those things about instant gratification, I very much saw equal lows and saw an opportunity for, quick money. Essentially, we have a significant expansion towards the lows, not necessarily understanding that, bro, this is simply a weak high, right? So this weak high essentially becomes what? Liquidity, simply because it's weak. But in my case, I was looking for, quick funds, really kind of just in and out of the markets, wasn't necessarily looking to focus for some reason. In whichever case, we very much paid for it, right? We didn't get our overall expansion towards the lows. Instead, we got a significant, in whichever case, oh, I mean, essentially, we just participated in a liquidity grab, right? A liquidation of this. Apologies, give me a second. A liquidation of towards the left of our bullish rejection block is Yeah, this is one of those losses that's like, oh my goodness, I cannot believe, but actually, it kind of did happen, right? So in whichever case, we just need to essentially grow from this. It's a tough loss, my friends. It's very much a tough loss, especially when you have an impulse this big. It's like, why do I even want to participate in this trade? However, when you understand that price is essentially just moving, it's an ever moving train. You understand that price is honestly being very forgiving. We have a three candle formation for essentially a target, especially with this slanted high. We have, it's pretty obvious where the price is already going, essentially, right? As well as very much using this unmitigated wick as a mitigation sequence, as you can very much tell. In whichever case, really kind of understanding the plethora of liquidity that resides in this little bit of price action right here, off of maybe, let me see, we have a bullish rejection block, body candle. We have a liquidation of our mitigation key level. Essentially, yeah, that's exactly what happened. In whichever case, we should probably expect a return to price just to essentially liquidate these, essentially these lows towards the near future, which I mean we very much did have. But in whichever case, we are very much provided with a protected low, weak high. Price uses this unmitigated wick as essentially an opportunity to scale in a liquidity grab, continue towards the lows, reach for internal range liquidity, which is essentially a weak low. Reacting towards an unmitigated wick may be a imbalanced close price action from the looks of price action, as well as really kind of I'm sorry, not imbalance. It's more so a rebalancing mechanism, just by the looks of price action at this point, simply because we have what, three candles, three candles essentially being rebalanced off of each other. So that's where rebalancing mechanism essentially comes from, right? But yes, a significant of opportunity being presented to us even after a missed opportunity that could have been capitalized on. We will look for this in the near future, of course. Moving on to our next trade opportunity. Again, just out of sync with the market. It was a tough week for us. I'm not gonna lie. We have an expansion, correction, expansion, which is fine. It's most definitely fine. Just reacting toward a significant mitigation sequence in whichever case. However, it's important to understand that when you change your mindset about what's actually going on within these markets, it's essentially price, us, being the instant gratification, money hungry person that we, presume to be at this point by, of course, our choices that we are making. Price went from a confirmation setup to a liquidity grab. Fairly simple. Or not a liquidity grab, more so a liquidity grab, depending on, obviously the QM being presented, but more so a direct entry, right? So we have a weak low, weak high being presented, a liquidation, manipulation, or whichever case. We have a significant amount of essentially break of structures in the essentially towards the highs. Looking left, we have a significant amount of liquidity being a slanted high. Price retest reaches for internal range liquidity, essentially mitigating a bullish rejection block, continuing towards the highs. Fairly simple. In whichever case, understanding why it is so important to not necessarily get so emotional when looking at these markets, simply because what turned out to be, an epic fail ended up being a direct entry, essentially for, of course, lower time frame. We'll call it scalp trades. However, in this case, we were just establishing a weak low, weak high, using it as liquidity, manipulation, break of structure, retest, and then of course it just turns into a, I'm not gonna say turns into a, we essentially transfer the volume from the weak low, weak high, essentially a half trend to a full trend, right? Essentially the protected low, weak high of the bullish rejection block. Fairly simple, my friends. Go ahead and clean this up. My friends, yet another opportunity for essentially an epic fail, right? Essentially, we failed to really kind of locate the actual range, essentially going to be very much this half trend that's being presented. If we had understood that, we would have very much noticed that prices are essentially taking out liquidity, breaking structure in the opposite direction. Essentially, we are provided with a choke as well as break of structure. Price used a cluster of, I mean, it's, if I'm being honest, it's a ranged market. So essentially, we're dealing with a weak high, weak low. Use this as a significant liquidity pool. Go ahead and narrow this out a bit. At that point, we are exposed to a plethora of liquidity grabs to very much be presented within the markets. As long as we are creating lower highs, this trend line is very much valid. We can very much continue this impulse towards the lows, which I mean, essentially, we're reacting upon a very significant unmitigated wick, which is essentially a lower time frame order block, rendering this trend line essentially as liquidity, right? Essentially being weak high, unmitigated wick. I mean, fairly simple as far as liquidity being targeted from, of course, our mitigation sequence. Before we very much move on, again, it is very important to understand that mitigation sequences very much breed liquidity grabs, the highest form of liquidity being, of course, a three candle formation. My friends, for our last and final trade opportunity, we ended up, closing this week off at a pretty significant win. Price provided with us, price provided to us through market structure a weak low, protected high. Yes, we very much have a cluster of liquidity grabs continuing towards obviously lower pricing, which is essentially establishing a significant amount of lower highs, essentially a trend line, right? This would give us essentially our confidence to really continue towards the lows, and understanding that price should very much, I mean, I'm not going to say it shouldn't, but it's more than likely not to break this trend line. Trend lines are 90% stronger than horizontal lines. Let's not forget that fact. As our range is very much presented, it's important to understand that we can very much use our Fibonacci to very much measure this range, catch a premium or fairly premium pricing, taking out internal range liquidity, being a weak high, continuing towards the lows, of course, right? In this case, this is understanding the essentially the expansion, correction, expansion, very much helping us continue or really complete this overall leg that the market has presented to us. Moving on to the next phase, our advanced portion. Price has essentially presented us with a opportunity for a QM to essentially take place off of this off of this bearish, off of this bearish rejection block. We are having essentially a liquidity grab, a break of structure, essentially in the opposite direction. Again, a QM forming. Price provides a failure to break a previous low, or previous major low, of course. We swing towards the highs, take out internal range liquidity. Very much going to act as a weak high. Price continues towards the lows. Essentially, we break we'll call it a three candle formation. We got a low, low, low. It's enough for me to resemble a three candle formation. Price uses weak highs to continue further towards the lows, really kind of establishing a T1 pattern, a tier type 1 pattern. Price retests for internal range liquidity, essentially a weak high, pretty much allowing us to continue our trend of liquidity grabs towards the lows, liquidity grabs magnetized towards mitigation sequences. As you can see, my friends, towards the left, we have an opportunity for just that. We have a weak high, protected low, essentially. We can very much highlight that as a liquidity pool, swinging towards the left. No, it does not need to be perfect, simply because if we transfer this mitigation sequence to essentially reformulate toward a nearest rejection block towards the left, even further, of course, we have our significant fair value mitigation sequence that's very much tapped, as well as maybe 90-85% of our overall mitigation sequence liquidated, right? However, I do very much encourage those who are very much new to just target, what's familiar just for right now, target what's familiar, and then very much go over it after, as we just did, and really kind of locate external range liquidity or internal range liquidity to its furthest extent, of course, right? Moving on to the master class phase, very much understanding or maybe really kind of knowing and becoming our system, essentially our Roguefx trading system. We are provided with a week low, week high. We can very much stretch that over. Really kind of identify an opportunity for a liquidity grab, of course, well over again. Looking towards the left, it's important to understand that we have a protected high, weak low, probably going to act as an order block just based off of this, essentially this imbalance that had to take place. This imbalance fill, price action inefficiency, of course, simply filling with the essentially the QM that's essentially being used to mitigate the rejection block towards the left. We're going to essentially ignore that at this point and really kind of just highlight the order block in general. We can very much shift that towards the left, as well as redefine it to its nearest breaker block, of course, right? We get a manipulation out of essentially our liquidity pool. We have internal range liquidity based off of a 3 candle formation, as well as a weak high. We take our entry, continue towards the lows. Fairly simple, fairly easy, fairly, in whichever case, fairly doable, right? These are things that can be done, can be replicated, and very much can be honed, right? I do appreciate every one of you guys for tuning in. I appreciate everyone who participates in the comment section below. I do appreciate everyone who participates within our memberships only program, of course. Mentorship opportunities are very much closed right now. However, I do offer Signal services as well as a Signals chat to very much stay updated and stay pretty much laced up on a significant amount of knowledge due to, I mean, obviously, if you trade GJ or gold, you have a free ticket to learn with me. In that case, of course, but who knows? I could be transferring over to maybe US 30 or maybe even crypto in the near future. In whichever case, guys, these are all opportunities, and this is why we trade, of course, right? I thank God for my career. I thank God for continuing to keep me faithful, keep me continuing to persevere, and continuing to very much hone my craft to get better every day, essentially, for you guys, but essentially, for myself, right? Because I mean, this is my dream, and I would hate to waste it. Really, kind of, essentially, not necessarily appreciating what is very much in front of me, right? Um, Again, I do appreciate all the love, the support. Until next time on Jody FX.